Karen sets off hotel fire alarm after room service takes too long, claims it was urgent hospitality call. The glass doors of the Four Seasons Royal Crest Hotel glided open with a soft whoosh as Karen Henderson strutted into the marbled lobby, dragging behind her a rose gold suitcase that clattered noisily with every wheel rotation. Her oversized sunglasses, still on despite the sun having dipped behind the horizon an hour ago, reflected the golden glow of the chandelier above as she surveyed the room like a queen appraising a poorly kept palace. Her lips pursed in irritation before she even reached the front desk. "Is that supposed to be art?" she muttered to herself, nodding toward a minimalist sculpture near the fireplace. Then, in a louder voice that cut through the tranquil jazz music playing in the background, she barked, "Excuse me. Is anyone going to greet me, or are we just ignoring guests now?" A young concierge scrambled forward, nearly bumping into a bellhop in his haste to assist. "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to the Royal Crest. May I?" "I have a reservation. Henderson, Karen Henderson, spelled exactly how it sounds. H-E-N-D, oh, don't bother, just find it. And I expect my suite to be ready with chilled sparkling water and not that off-brand nonsense either. Perrier or nothing. I specifically requested it in my booking, and if you people mess that up again like the last time, I swear." "Yes, ma'am. Of course, Miss Henderson," the concierge replied, his voice polite but increasingly robotic. He tapped at the computer quickly, then passed her keycard with the practiced smile of someone who had endured 1,000 entitled complaints. "Your executive terrace suite is ready. The minibar has been stocked as requested. Bellhop will assist you shortly." Karen snatched the keycard like she was being handed a court summons. "It's about time." She turned without a word of thanks and marched toward the elevator, nearly knocking over an elderly couple in the process. As the elevator doors closed behind her, she muttered to no one in particular, "4 stars. I've seen better service at gas stations." Up in the suite, she gave the room a cursory glance, clicked her tongue in disapproval at the pattern of the throw pillows, and made a mental note to deduct a star on her inevitable TripAdvisor rant. She opened the minibar and frowned when she spotted a single bottle of local sparkling water instead of Perrier. Her fingers hovered over the room phone like a gunslinger itching for a draw, but she pulled her hand back and huffed. "Unbelievable," she whispered, then sat on the sofa and picked up the in-room menu, thumbing through it with the disdain of someone flipping through a magazine at the dentist's office. "This better not take forever," she said aloud to the empty suite before dialing room service. "Yes, hello, this is Suite 1802. I want the herb-crusted salmon but no sauce, and the potatoes need to be mashed, not roasted, and steamed broccoli instead of carrots. Also, can I get the creme brulee but with the sugar top extra torched? I hate when it's soft." She paused and added, "Make it quick. I've had a long day and I'm starving." The attendant on the other end acknowledged her order with professional calm, giving her the standard estimate of 20 to 25 minutes due to the dinner rush. Karen exhaled dramatically. "Unacceptable. 20 minutes for fish. It's not like you're catching it fresh. Whatever, just hurry." She hung up and paced the room for a few minutes, arms crossed, tapping her foot loudly against the hardwood floor. She turned on the TV, flipped through the channels, then turned it off again with a disgusted snort. "Useless. Nothing but garbage," she muttered. The seconds ticked by like molasses. At the 10-minute mark, she called reception to check on the status of her food. "Still being prepared," they replied, their voice tinged with just a hint of strain. By the 20-minute mark, Karen was seated by the door like a gargoyle guarding a castle gate, arms crossed tightly and nostrils flaring. "This is outrageous," she whispered, her voice now tinged with indignation. "I paid over $600 a night, and I can't even get a plate of fish on time." Her eyes flicked toward the hallway outside. The room was silent except for the faint sound of other guests murmuring in nearby suites and the distant clatter of kitchen activity rising from below. Then her gaze landed on the red rectangular box on the wall beside the suite entrance. She stood. There was a glint of defiance in her eyes now, the self-righteous conviction of someone who genuinely believed that the world owed her better. "If they won't come for a call, maybe they'll come for a crisis," she mumbled. One long, deliberate step forward and she was in front of the fire alarm. Her hand hovered, hesitated, then firmly grasped the small glass panel. She pressed. The blaring alarm pierced the hotel like a siren of war, jolting guests out of conversations and dinners, interrupting elevator rides and throwing the once elegant atmosphere into chaos. Lights flashed red. A pre-recorded voice began repeating over the intercom. "Attention guests, please evacuate the building in a calm and orderly fashion. This is a fire emergency." In the hallways, doors opened as confused and panicked guests peered out, some grabbing bags, others ushering out children in pajamas. Karen, meanwhile, calmly returned to the couch, crossed her legs, and waited. Within 5 minutes, 2 hotel employees in security uniforms and a floor supervisor burst into her suite, breathless and wide-eyed. One had a radio in hand, the other a fire extinguisher. "Ma'am, are you all right? Did you see smoke? Where is the fire?" Karen tilted her head and replied, unfazed, "I was just trying to get someone to bring my food. This was an urgent hospitality call." They stared at her in stunned silence. She continued, "I've been waiting 20 minutes. Nobody came. Nobody called. What else was I supposed to do? You've got phones ringing downstairs, but no one's serving the guests up here. This was the only way to get someone's attention." The radio crackled with the voice of a fire marshal on his way up the stairwell. The floor supervisor's mouth dropped open slightly, then closed. He turned to one of the security staff, whispered something quickly, and then returned his attention to Karen. "Ma'am, you do understand that pulling a fire alarm without an emergency is a serious offense. You just triggered a full building evacuation protocol." Karen shrugged. "And yet here you are, proves my point, doesn't it?" Just then a knock came at the door. Room service had arrived, her salmon, still steaming, balanced on a silver tray. The young waiter, wide-eyed and shaken, stood there holding it out awkwardly amidst the flashing lights and chaos. Karen smiled, took the tray, and said, "Finally. See, sometimes you have to take action if you want to be treated with respect." Behind her, alarms continued to blare and guests continued to flee. But Karen simply placed the tray on the table, sat back down, and tucked a napkin into her collar with all the elegance of a queen awaiting her coronation. The blaring alarms had only just begun to taper off when the fire marshal stormed into Suite 1802 with 2 more emergency personnel trailing behind him, all of them flushed, panting, and visibly annoyed. His boots squeaked against the polished marble floor as he scanned the room, expecting signs of smoke, or at least the acrid scent of scorched wiring. Instead, he found a woman in a silk robe casually cutting into a perfectly cooked piece of salmon, the room not only intact but as undisturbed as if the chaos outside didn't exist. He blinked in disbelief as Karen, without so much as glancing up, muttered, "You people really took your time. Is this the kind of service that passes for luxury now?" The room fell into a brief, surreal silence as the marshal stared, then turned to the hotel supervisor, who gave a tight, apologetic shake of his head. The marshal began, already rubbing the bridge of his nose, "You pulled the fire alarm. That is a felony in most places. I need to know exactly what you saw or heard that caused you to believe there was a fire emergency." Karen finally looked up, her eyes filled with the performative indignation of someone used to winning petty arguments through sheer willpower alone. She wiped the corner of her mouth with a cloth napkin and said, "I didn't see or hear anything. I was hungry. I waited. No one came. I rang twice and was dismissed. I simply did what I had to do to make my needs known. If you call that a false alarm, maybe it's your system that needs fixing, not me." The room seemed to hold its breath as the marshal looked at her like she was speaking in riddles. The young waiter still stood awkwardly at the suite entrance, unsure whether to flee or freeze. Behind him, more guests had begun to crowd into the hallway, wrapped in robes, slippers, even a few in wet towels, all evacuated mid-shower or spa appointment. Whispers and camera phones had started to rise like a storm. Someone was already live streaming, panning from the blaring lights to Cairn, now resuming her dinner with theatrical precision. The hotel staff exchanged worried looks as the scope of the situation became increasingly clear. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was about to become a full-scale PR disaster. Downstairs, the lobby was a hive of confusion. Sofia Martinez, the hotel's front desk manager and de facto crisis handler, stood at the center of it all, fielding questions from concerned guests, apologizing to furious wedding planners, and attempting to calm down a group of panicked tourists who had left their passports behind during the evacuation. Her phone buzzed constantly with updates from her team, and her earpiece crackled with overlapping voices. When the call from the head of security came through, it's not a real emergency. It was a guest, a Cairn basically. Closed her eyes for a long moment, composed herself and said, "Then we're going to treat it like both, damage control, now." Within 30 minutes, the fire department had officially declared the alarm a false activation. Guests were slowly ushered back into their rooms. Apologies were given, champagne vouchers handed out and explanations rehearsed. But the tension lingered. In the hotel kitchen, the head chef, Dominique, already known for his temper and perfectionism, slammed down a ladle with a clatter that echoed through the stainless steel walls. "She pulls a fire alarm for late fish," he spat, packing like a lion in a cage. "This is not a restaurant, this is sabotage. We lose 6 table reservations. I throw away 4 creme brulees, for what? To serve a tyrant in a robe." His sous chef tried to calm him, but Dominique was already storming toward the back office. "I am redesigning tomorrow's menu. If she wants a show, she will get one." Upstairs, Cairn had finished her meal and was now reclining on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. She paused when she saw herself, blurry but recognizable, in a video titled, "Cairn Pulls Hotel Fire Alarm for Bad Service Sparks Chaos," already trending on a local gossip account. Her lip twitched. She clicked on it. The comments were relentless. "Imagine being so entitled, you commit a crime over dinner. People like her are why hotel workers need combat pay. Send her the bill for the fire trucks." Cairn narrowed her eyes, tossing the phone onto the coffee table with a huff. Idiots. They weren't even there. They don't know how bad the service was. But the seed of unease had been planted. She marched over to the phone again and called reception. When Sofia answered, keeping her voice even, Cairn didn't even wait for the greeting. "Yes, I'd like to make a formal complaint." The waiter looked frightened. The fire marshal was rude. "And frankly, if your staff had any training at all, I wouldn't have been forced to resort to such drastic measures." Sofia exhaled slowly. "I understand, Ms. Henderson. We take your feedback seriously. Management will be reviewing the entire incident thoroughly. In the meantime, we'll ensure that the remainder of your stay is appropriately addressed." Her tone was polished, her phrasing deliberate, but every word was being documented. Sofia had already escalated the matter to the hotel's regional director. Legal was being looped in. Corporate reputation officers were crafting press responses. What Cairn didn't know was that she had been quietly flagged in the hotel's CRM system as a high-risk guest. Sofia's notes were detailed, her incident report thorough, and with every additional phone call or demand Cairn made, the case against her was growing. Still, Cairn remained oblivious, content in the illusion of control mistaking silence for submission. She lay back on the plush bed, smirking at her reflection in the mirror. "Sometimes," she whispered to herself, "you have to shake the table to be served." But downstairs, the table was already being reset, without her. Sofia pulled aside her core staff, held a quiet meeting in the service hallway, and began assigning roles. The bellhop was tasked with tracking Cairn's movements. The chef had full permission to engage in creative service, and the marketing team began monitoring social media feeds for fallout. A line had been crossed, and while the hotel couldn't retaliate directly, they could defend themselves with finesse. And so, with the guests back in their rooms and the staff back at their posts, the Four Seasons Royal Crest Hotel returned to business on the surface. But just beneath that glossy exterior, a quiet resistance had begun. The guest in 1802 had made her play. Now it was the hotel's turn. Morning light poured through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of Suite 1802, painting soft golden streaks across the plush carpeting. Birds chirped somewhere beyond the glass, and the city's skyline twinkled in the early light, but the peace was short-lived. Karen sat upright in bed, already annoyed. She had ordered a wake-up call for 7:00 a.m. sharp, yet it had come at 6:58, a full 2 minutes early. That was enough for her to throw off the covers with an audible groan and storm barefoot across the suite to call reception. Her voice, sharp and theatrical, echoed through the phone lines as she complained about incompetence and lack of attention to detail before slamming the receiver down. This, she believed, would set the tone for the day, that tone being one of dominance and corrective action. In her mind, the hotel had failed her, and she would teach them professionalism whether they liked it or not. 10 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Expecting breakfast, she had placed an order the night before for a special tray with organic juice, over-easy eggs, toast cut diagonally, and a fruit medley minus bananas. Karen opened the door in her robe, only to find a procession. 3 hotel staff stood in a line. The first, a uniformed butler, held a silver tray with a single boiled egg in an ornate crystal egg cup. The second, a violinist in full tuxedo, stood silently with his bow at the ready. The third was the head waiter himself, who, with a straight face, announced, "Per your request, your egg is served with entertainment befitting its elegance." He stepped aside, and the violinist began playing a passionate sonata right there in the hallway. Karen stared at the trio, stunned, but too proud to show confusion. "Well, finally," she muttered and took the tray. The performance followed her inside. The violinist continued playing while she ate, the notes soaring and dipping dramatically as Karen tried to slice the egg with as much grace as possible. After 2 minutes of this, she had had enough. "Okay, stop that. I didn't ask for music. What is this?" she snapped. The violinist stopped mid-note and bowed politely before exiting without a word. The waiter and butler did the same, leaving her alone again. She sat in silence, the egg now cold, her mood rapidly darkening. She called the front desk once more, demanding to speak to a manager. Sophia answered again, calm and composed as ever. "Good morning, Ms. Henderson," Sophia said with syrupy smoothness. "I trust your breakfast arrived to your standards." Karen scoffed. "Don't play coy. What was that little parade you sent me? I asked for breakfast, not a circus." "My sincerest apologies. We just wanted to ensure your order received the kind of urgency you demonstrated yesterday. We wouldn't want you to feel neglected again." Karen's eye twitched slightly. She sensed something under Sophia's words but couldn't quite catch it. "You're mocking me. I know you are. Don't get clever with me. I'll have your job." "I understand, ma'am. Your feedback is being taken seriously," Sophia replied, then gently hung up. She had a meeting to prepare for. Corporate had officially stepped in. Meanwhile, word of the cairn in 1802 had spread among the hotel staff like wildfire. Stories grew more embellished with each retelling. She threw caviar at the valet. She demanded the pool be drained and refilled with filtered water. She asked the bellhop to polish her luggage handles. Staff avoided her when they could, but others leaned into the absurdity. One porter began making a game of sneaking tiny plastic flamingos into her fruit trays. A cleaner left a towel folded into a snarling wolf shape with a bow on its head. The pastry chef crafted a chocolate soufflé with the words, "Your Highness," piped in white chocolate across the plate. Each act small, almost invisible, but satisfying to those who had endured her contempt. By midday, Karen noticed something else. People were starring. Not just staff, but guests. A pair of influencers whispering in the elevator while side-eyeing her. A middle-aged man at the lobby cafe doing a double take as she passed. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was circling around her. She checked her phone and opened her social media feed. The video was everywhere now. Dozens of accounts had shared it. Thousands of comments racked up under captions like, "She called the fire department for room service," and "Hotel Diva shuts down entire floor over dinner delay." Karen's stomach dropped. She scrolled through the flood of responses, some mocking, others outright furious. Memes had already begun forming. One showed her face photoshopped onto a fire truck, another turned her salmon into a torch. She threw the phone onto the bed with a strangled groan and collapsed into the chair by the window. "Idiots," she hissed, but now it sounded hollow, less certain. Downstairs, Sophia was briefing the regional director, who had arrived in a sleek black car an hour earlier. They sat in a glass-walled conference room just off the executive lounge, joined by legal counsel and the brand's PR specialist. Every detail of the incident had been documented: the timeline, the evacuation, the emergency costs, the social media damage, the guest complaints. The video footage from the fire alarm corridor sealed it. There was no longer a question of what had happened. The only question now was how the hotel would respond publicly, and how to remove Cairn without making the story worse. The PR specialist was clear. "We don't want a scene, but we also don't reward dangerous behavior. No comps, no upgrades. We issue a formal statement to the press if needed, and then we flag her across the global network. She's blacklisted from every partner hotel from here to Tokyo." Sophia nodded. She'd already drafted a message to Cairn's room under the pretense of following up on her guest experience. The real contents were less courteous. Upstairs, Cairn was composing a furious email to the CEO of the hotel chain, copying several news outlets for good measure. She recounted her version of events with flowery language and veiled threats, declaring emotional distress, reputational harm, and a demand for a free 7-night stay to heal from this trauma. But even as she typed, her hands trembled slightly. The video views were climbing fast. Her name was trending for all the wrong reasons. She tried to reassure herself, telling her reflection in the mirror, "They'll fix this. They have to." She didn't hear the quiet knock at the door or the envelope that slid under it a moment later. The paper bore the hotel's crest in gold. The message inside was brief, polite, and final. Cairn read it once, then twice. Her face drained of color. She clutched the note tightly, her fingers whitening at the knuckles. It read, "Dear Ms. Henderson, thank you for staying at the Four Seasons Royal Crest. Due to recent events, your stay will not be extended beyond the current reservation. Please be informed that future bookings will no longer be accommodated at any of our properties worldwide. We wish you safe travels." The paper trembled in her hands. For the first time in a long while, Cairn found herself completely, utterly speechless. The envelope sat like a curse in Cairn's lap, its elegant crest mocking her with every breath she took. Her eyes remained glued to the message, disbelief and indignation wrestling for dominance behind her frozen expression. How dare they? How dare they? She had been a loyal guest, a top-tier rewards member, someone who once left a glowing review for another property in the chain 3 years ago. She was entitled to better. This blacklisting wasn't just an insult, it was a declaration of war. Her lips parted, her face flushed with rising heat as her internal pressure reached boiling point. Throwing the paper down onto the floor like it had personally betrayed her, she stormed to the suite phone and stabbed at the 0 key. It rang once before Sophia's calm voice answered. "This is Sophia speaking." "What the hell is this?" Cairn barked, not bothering with pleasantries. "This note, this termination of my stay. What kind of operation are you people running? Do you think you can treat me like some vagabond off the street? I'll have your badge, your title, your whole damn hotel shut down." Sophia let the silence hold for a second longer than necessary. Then, still with a tone as smooth as silk, she replied, "Ms. Henderson, the decision came from corporate leadership. It is final. We're more than happy to assist with your checkout process. I've already arranged for a luggage porter, and we can book you a ride to the airport or any destination of your choice." "I'm not going anywhere," Cairn snapped, her voice shrill now. "You think you can kick me out after what I've been through? You caused this mess. You failed in your service and now I'm being punished. No, I want the regional director here. Now, in person, I will not be dismissed like a criminal." There was a pause, a soft clicking of keyboard keys in the background, and then Sophia's voice returned with perfect professionalism. Ms. Henderson, the regional director, has reviewed the incident, including footage, staff testimonies, and guest complaints. The alarm activation constituted a public safety violation. We are choosing not to pursue legal action. We are, however, ending your stay. Your room will be deactivated at noon. Karen's mouth opened, but words failed her. There was a new kind of silence now, one not born of control but of realization. Her power here was gone. Her name, her reputation, her platinum membership, it all meant nothing now. She slammed the phone down so hard the receiver bounced off the cradle and clattered to the floor. Trembling, she rushed to the minibar, poured herself a shot of complimentary vodka, downed it, and grabbed her phone. She dialed her sister first, explaining the story with frantic urgency, painting herself as the victim of a personal vendetta by hotel management. Her sister tried to keep up but interrupted to ask, "Wait, you pulled a fire alarm?" Karen yelled that it was a symbolic gesture, a last resort. Her sister went quiet, then mumbled something about picking up her kids from school and hung up. Next, Karen called a blogger friend who once covered luxury hotels. He declined to publish the story. "It's too messy," he said. "Public safety violations, viral video backlash. Sorry, Karen, I don't want to be part of that storm." Click. With each call, each rejection, Karen's fury thickened, but underneath it was something colder and harder to admit: fear. She was losing control of the narrative. Online, the meme storm had gone nuclear. A trending Twitter thread had begun dissecting the footage frame by frame. Influencers were recreating her meltdown in parody videos, racking up views in the millions. The hashtag #AlarmBellKaren was now a top trend. Someone even created a song remix using her quote about urgent hospitality calls. It was already on TikTok, accompanied by dancing bellhops. Karen's name was no longer just her own, it was a viral punchline. Meanwhile, the hotel had transitioned smoothly into its next phase of operation: erasure. Staff were instructed to stop responding to Karen unless absolutely necessary. Her room was removed from the spa booking system. Housekeeping skipped her suite on their rotation. Her profile in the hotel database was permanently flagged. A memo circulated among partner locations warning of her tactics, quoting her own words back to them like cautionary scripture. Sophia, though polite and professional, no longer entertained her calls. The message was clear. Karen Henderson no longer existed in the realm of luxury hospitality. By noon, her keycard had been disabled. When she returned from a last-ditch attempt to visit the spa for stress relief, she found herself locked out of her suite, luggage already packed and wheeled into the hallway by two uniformed porters standing silently like sentries. "Ma'am," one of them said gently, "your checkout is complete. Your personal driver is waiting downstairs." Karen wanted to scream, but there was no one to scream at who would care. With cameras trained on her, she did the only thing she could do. She lifted her chin, muttered something about calling her lawyers, and walked to the elevator with her pride shielding the cracks beneath. Downstairs in the lobby, Sophia stood beside the revolving door, waiting to ensure the departure went smoothly. The staff around her kept their expressions neutral, though behind their eyes was the kind of satisfaction that only came from watching justice served discreetly and elegantly. As Karen exited the elevator, dragging her suitcase behind her, the murmurs began again. A few guests recognized her. One whispered something and the others laughed. She felt the heat rise to her cheeks but kept walking, shoulders squared, eyes forward. When she reached the doors, Sophia stepped forward and extended a hand not to shake but to gesture toward the waiting car. "We appreciate your stay, Ms. Henderson. Safe travels." It was not sarcasm, but it wasn't warm either. It was closure. Karen didn't respond. She climbed into the black town car, slammed the door, and refused to look back. The vehicle pulled away from the curb, blending into the late afternoon traffic. For a moment, it was as if she had never been there. But inside the hotel, her name would linger as a legend. Among staff, the story of the guest who pulled the fire alarm for salmon would become folklore, cautionary, ridiculous, unforgettable. And in the hotel's crisis meeting later that day, Sophia, now being considered for a fast-track executive position in guest operations, summarized the event in one sentence. "We no longer bend for chaos disguised as entitlement." Everyone in the room nodded. Back in the car, Karen gripped her phone, scrolling endlessly looking for anyone to take her side. But all she saw were jokes, remixes, comment threads longer than the Bible. Her voice had been drowned out by a chorus of laughing strangers, and for the first time in her life, she didn't have the final word. The car ride was silent, save for the dull hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional ping of Karen's phone, each notification a fresh reminder that her name had transcended her control. She sat rigid in the backseat, staring out the tinted window at the blur of a city that seemed indifferent to her spiraling downfall. Her phone, clenched tightly in her hand, buzzed again with another news headline. "Hotel alarm Karen goes viral. What really happened at the Royal Crest?" The attached video had surpassed 3 million views. Below it, comment sections swarmed with mockery, speculation, and memes. She had become a joke, not just locally but globally, a punchline in digital conversations she could neither steer nor silence. No amount of angry emails, lawyer threats, or self-righteous posts could put the genie back in the bottle. She had lost the one thing she valued more than her self-image: control. The driver, a quiet professional, kept his eyes on the road, offering no conversation. He had received instructions from the hotel: be polite but do not engage. When he finally pulled up to her next hotel, a smaller, less prestigious one on the edge of downtown, Karen noticed immediately the absence of grandeur. The facade was plain, the entrance narrow, and the staff noticeably less polished. Still, it was the only place that had accepted her booking after a string of silent rejections. She had called 6 hotels that morning, all of which either gave vague excuses or flatly stated they could not accommodate her. The Four Seasons blacklist had spread quickly, and whispers followed her name like a virus. At this point, she was grateful just to find a place that would take her in. She stepped out of the car with a brittle expression, trying to summon her usual swagger, but the effect was dulled. Her heels clicked on the concrete as she entered the lobby, but no heads turned, no red carpet moments greeted her. The receptionist barely looked up, simply handed her a key card and pointed to the elevator. No bellhop, no welcome drink, no curated ambience. She rode the elevator alone, the air stifling and quiet, the walls coated in muted beige. When she opened the door to her new room, the downgrade was jarring. Gone were the velvet curtains and gold accents. No skyline view, no marble tub, no curated minibar. Just a clean, serviceable room with 2 standard pillows and a television bolted to the wall. She dropped her luggage with a sigh and sat heavily on the edge of the bed. The air conditioning unit clicked noisily to life. The weight of everything, the humiliation, the backlash, the silence from people she once believed were allies, pressed down on her. She had built her identity on being important, on commanding attention, on walking into any space and bending it to her will. But now, she was just another disgruntled guest in a budget hotel, her name smeared across social media, her influence deflated. Karen opened her laptop and began typing furiously, drafting a long Facebook post titled, "My Side of the Story." She detailed everything from her arrival to the so-called mistreatment by hotel staff, carefully omitting her own missteps, reframing events to cast herself as the victim of an orchestrated smear campaign. She spoke of being targeted, of systemic hospitality failures, of how society was becoming hostile to strong, vocal women. She wrote with the desperation of someone trying to rewrite reality, but when she posted it, the silence was deafening. A few pity likes from distant acquaintances, one vague comment of support, the rest, more backlash. Screenshots were reposted, her side dissected and laughed at. One user summed it up perfectly: "This isn't your side, it's your spin." She closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling. For the first time, she wondered if she had gone too far. Not just at the Four Seasons, but everywhere. The restaurant she screamed at last month for undercooked risotto. The airline employee she reduced to tears over a delayed flight. The barista she demanded be retrained for using oat milk instead of almond. All those little moments where she believed she was standing up for standards now came flooding back as scenes of someone who had confused cruelty for power. The entitlement, the belief that volume equaled validity. Was it all just armor covering insecurity? The thought scratched at her, but she pushed it away, too stubborn to let it fully take root. Outside, the city moved on without her. The royal crest had returned to normal. The staff were lighter, more jovial, a shared sense of triumph binding them after surviving the storm. Sophia received an official commendation and a fast-track promotion to a regional oversight role. The fire marshal issued a statement praising the hotel's swift emergency response. Dominique, the head chef, added a cheeky new dish to the menu. Cairns fire alarm salmon, served cold, without warning, and accompanied by a theatrical violinist for those who dared order it. It became a quiet inside joke among regulars, a symbolic reminder that the dignity of hospitality staff was not to be trifled with. As night fell, Cairn lay in bed, scrolling through her phone despite herself. Her feed, once filled with travel recommendations and compliments on her curated lifestyle, was now overrun with ridicule. Her followers were dwindling. Sponsors who once sent her products were going silent. Even her favorite beauty brand had unfollowed her. She turned the screen off and dropped the phone on the nightstand with a loud clunk. The room was dark now, save for the blinking red light on the smoke detector above, a cruel reminder of the moment everything had changed. A single pull of a fire alarm, born out of impatience and pride, had pulled down the walls of her carefully built persona. She rolled onto her side, facing the window. There was no view, just the brick wall of another building. For the first time in years, she didn't know what came next. She had always believed she could bounce back from anything with a little spin, a little outrage, a little public shamming of someone else. But now, with no audience willing to cheer her on, all she had left was the echo of her own voice. And in that quiet room, with nothing left to conquer, she realized something that chilled her more than any hotel air conditioner ever could. The world was moving on, and it didn't care whether she came with it or not. And for once, Karen Henderson had no one left to demand anything from.